Are giants real? To all you white people, listen up. I am a native of Afghanistan who was raised in the mountains of Kandahar. I have witnessed so many weird things over there that if I were to tell you all about it, you would crap your pants. Yes, it's true. These giants, jinns, do exist. I have seen them several times in my youth from distance and also had a very disturbing and frightening encounter of the third degree. Once, my grandma sent me out just 2 hours before sunset to go to the local tandoori bread shop in the next village to get some bread. I had to go for a mountain valley pass, and on top of one of the mountains, there is a cave. We were told by our elders to never go to the cave, but I have been a kind person from a young age who has been a rascal, is very adventurous, and also very curious to look up things. So I decided, let me go and check what's up in the cave. It took me about 20 minutes to go up to the cave. It is a big cave, with bats hanging from its ceiling, loads of them. I went inside and immediately felt a repulsive stench, but I still continued further into the cave. Further inside the cave, there were some boulders, and as I approached one of the biggest boulders, I started to hear strange noises, as if someone was holding conversation with someone in a very loud tone. This gave me the chills. But in Afghanistan, every male kid is taught from young that he is not a man if he backs off. So I climbed up one of the boulders, well hidden from sight, to see who was talking. I saw 3 hairy creatures who had the features of humans, but were not humans. 2 hairy adults and 1 young one, probably their kid. The male was about 15 feet tall, the female probably 12 to 13, and the kid was about 6 feet tall or something like that. But all of them were very heavy built and had red hair on top of their head. The eyes of the adults were also lit red. They had double rows of teeth. I studied their legs and hands too. They had more toes and fingers than a normal human being, and they were all naked. The stench either came from them, or it was the cadaver that they were eating on. They spoke some odd language, but I could pick up some few words and sentences that were similar to my language, Pashto. They were about 15 to 20 meters from me in distance, and I kept very silent. While they were talking to each other, one of them said, "There is an odd human smell in here." The female said, "It's probably some humans going to pass outside, so keep eating." As soon as I picked this up, I slowly slid down from my boulder and made my exit from there, while looking back off my shoulder several times to see if I had been detected or not. As soon as I was outside the cave entrance, I legged it like Quicksilver from X-Men to the shop to get my bread. Now I knew why the elders were saying, never go to the cave. I was really lucky. If they had caught me, I don't know what would have happened to me, but I learned my lesson to listen to my elders. So people, these giants do exist in Afghanistan, and in many villages, people give offers to them, cattle and sheep, so that they leave the humans alone. The giants before us. Throughout Native American burial mounds across the Midwest since the 1800s, strange 8 to 12 foot tall skeletons have been unearthed of what appear to be a race of giant humans that once occupied North America. Not only was there allegedly multiple ethnicities of these giants present, but some exhibited strange deformities, such as a second row of teeth, 6 fingers and 6 toes, or even 4 horn-like growths protruding from the forehead. The skeletons were also notably broader and stockier than modern humans, with some purportedly having elongated skulls with wide-set jaws with a far more pronounced sagittal crest. Native North and South Americans both share similar story traditions of violent encounters between their ancestors and a red-haired race of cannibalistic giants which had inhabited the land before them. Unilaterally, these conflicts all ended with the giants being systematically wiped out by their smaller and more cunning adversaries. Interestingly, other accounts of ancient red-haired giants also exist in other parts of the world, with many cultures sharing similar themes in their mythologies, perhaps most notably the pan-cultural meme of giants having been something far more common before the onset of a great flood or some other cataclysm. Dubiously, evidence of these finds typically goes missing shortly after being brought to scientific institutions, leading many to write this phenomenon off as little more than hoaxes. Interestingly enough, however, there seems to be no shortage of credible archaeologists and anthropologists over the last century who have testified to the authenticity of such discoveries. But even this does little to dissuade skeptics, particularly in an age of outlandish clickbait articles and clearly photoshopped hoaxes. And with modern bans on the excavation of Native American burial mounds, it is unlikely any new discoveries will be occurring with any frequency in the near future. I'm normally a sci guy, but I've been noticing an unbelievable trend in human history and development, and it's something that anybody in sci will get shunned and treated like a flat earther for. They can tend to be like the Catholic Church that once opposed science itself when it comes to new ideas, so I'm here to try and build up my theory and hear what X thinks regarding the subject. So, giants. Stories of giants are prominent in almost every culture, whether that's the Old Testament, talking about Goliath, the Quran, talking about demons seeding humans to create massive abominations of humans, feudal Japanese legends, and even 20th century Japan celebrating its supposed history of giants. The Scottish legends about giant trolls to the gigantes of both Greek and Roman mythology. Mind you, they were called something else in Roman mythos, although I initially forget. People believe in things for a reason. Those here that participate in divination general, for example, believe in it because they believe they can see the effects. People believe in religion due to both available ancient texts and due to logical reasoning that points out the existence of their god or gods. Why would people believe in giants? Why would giants be so common in all cultures of the world? Because perhaps they were once real. But maybe stories aren't the right logical foundation, because after all, they are just stories. So what about the 120 centimeter human femur, or the North African dig sites? There is also the classic History Channel shows that try to prove giants once walked the earth, and despite not being publicly recognized, they usually find legitimate evidence that is quite convincing. If there is logical and physical evidence, why isn't it being looked into and tweaked into our history? As previously stated, I am not your normal tinfoil hatter. I'm a guy with interests in biology and astrophysics, but I am beginning to legitimately believe that giants were once real. In 2002, a US Army patrol went missing in a very remote area of Kandahar province, Afghanistan. Another patrol was dispatched on a search and rescue mission. One soldier commented on what they had found. As we bent around this corner, you could see the opening of the cave, and then I see a lot of rocks, which is another oddity, and then bone matter. I'm not close enough to identify what kind of bones, but I did see what I knew to be a piece of our communications equipment. So, instantly we're thinking, ambush. Maybe animal, could be anything. There was enough room in front of the cave, but it had a sheer drop-off. But there was enough room that we got into a decent dispersal in case of ambush. Not long after they had gotten into the dispersal formation, they saw something emerge from the cave that caught them fully off guard. It was a man, at least 12 to 15 feet in height. This is a monster. Red beard. His hair was longish, past his shoulders, a scarlet red. Dan runs at him and starts shooting, which broke all of us into reality, because it was surreal. While Dan is moving at him, another bro of mine is laying down fire, and I stop firing. He skewers Dan. He's now got him on this pike. It went through him. He has got him, and he is coming after more. We all just clicked in. I don't know what it was, but I remember we were all like, shoot him in the face, shoot him in the face. He's taking multiple hits, and he is still moving. Eventually, the giant was killed. A helicopter soon arrived. A large helicopter came by, dropped a hook, and the giant was carried off. The soldier confirmed that the red-haired, fair-skinned giant had 6 fingers on each hand and 6 toes on each foot. After they had submitted their report, the soldier recounts that they were told by their top brass to edit it in a particular fashion, presumably to remove any mention of a giant being. Another special operations soldier in Afghanistan provides the following testimony to the incident, even though he was not a direct witness to the incident. We will come back to the base and start hearing this rumor about a unit that killed this, what they started calling this really tall person. At first I did not think anything of it, then came to find out that the person that they killed was actually 3 times the size of a man, had extra digits on their hands, and extra digits on their feet, and had red hair, and a special unit had come in and wanted this target. Well, we'd heard that they killed this thing inside a cave, or the mouth of a cave, and there was common knowledge among the military to hear this. When you first hear, you're thinking like, this has got to be a joke. This has got to be a hoax. Then after things go down a certain way, and you keep hearing it, you start to realize it is not a joke. This pilot had landed at a base in Afghanistan and was told that they had to pick up special cargo, and that there was absolutely no cameras allowed. The pilot describes the cargo. It was basically a dead guy, and this guy was extremely large. And when I say large, our pallets are basically, if I remember correctly, about 9 by 12 feet or so. And this guy was laying in fetal position on the pallet, and he filled the pallet. He was around an 1,100-pound guy. The pilot corroborated much more of the details given by the other 2 witnesses, including the fact that this giant was fair-skinned, red hair, and had extra digits on his hands and feet. Now this account is not my own, but was told to me by a Marine doing combat tours in Afghanistan. For the sake of his own job and security clearance, he has asked that I not give any names and never mention what region they were operating in. From my understanding, the individuals who were with him during the encounter were from a task force operating under orders from the CIA. Beyond that, I was told next to nothing. I will refer to him as Sarge, if only to have a name. Anyway, here is his story. During a patrol, checking on some local farmers, Sarge's unit was made aware of a deadly being living in a cave system near their farms. When pushed for more information, the locals were only willing to say that this being was stealing from their farms and had killed a few people who had made the mistake of trying to protect their livelihood from it. Convinced the locals were being harassed by a group of Taliban fighters, half of Sarge's unit was sent out to investigate and either arrest or kill any hostile forces in the area. So, with a few Humvees armed with M2 machine guns, they went out to the cave where the mysterious being supposedly lived. Upon arrival, they noticed nothing of interest. There were signs that something was living in the cave, and the soldiers found animal bones scattered around the entry. Not wanting to risk his entire unit fighting in a cave that the enemy would know very well, Sarge sent his 2 fastest Marines to investigate. The 2 men just gave the others a cocky grin and a thumbs up before disappearing into the darkness beyond the mouth of the cave. For 10 minutes, there was nothing. Not a single sound, inside or outside the cave, other than the idle chatter of the bored Marines. Then sound erupted from the cave, shouting and screaming. In a matter of seconds, the 2 men emerged from the cave at a full run and zipped past their teammates, one of them shouting, "Run, just run." But like the hard-ass special forces operators they were, the other soldiers stood their ground, only to see a massive man emerge from the cave. He stood nearly 10 feet tall, with leathery skin and red hair. In one of its massive hands was a log that it began waving at the soldiers in a very obviously threatening manner. Shocked, but not panicked, Sarge commanded his men to shoot it, and the 12 Marines opened fire. But the bullet seemed to be doing little more than pissing this giant off. Finally, in desperation, one of them fired a grenade launcher at the being, blowing out a massive chunk of its flesh, exposing a small portion of the ribs and ripping most of the skin and muscle off. The giant retreated into the cave, and the soldiers decided that the best thing to do was to head back to the village and report to the rest of their unit. Clearly, This was more than a few Taliban militants. Even with that gaping wound, the giant was too terrifying for the Marines to willingly walk into its territory, so they headed back and reported to their CO. Of course, their boss did not believe them and demanded to see proof. So that night, they drove him out to the cave and showed him some of the shredded flesh that had been blown off by the grenade launcher. From here, the report went up the chain, and nobody knows what was done about this creature. I wish he would have told me more. From what I've managed to find on my own, accounts like this are not uncommon in that part of the Middle East. Of course, since all of these reports were word-of-mouth stories, I don't know how factual they are, or if they are being exaggerated. It was the spring of 2007. My then boyfriend and I were on our way from New York down to Miami to go to a music festival. We were driving south on the highway along the east coast of Central Florida when we pulled into a rest area so that he could catch a nap. He had been driving all day when he decided that he desperately needed a short rest before getting back behind the wheel. We had very recently bought the van, and he did not think that I could handle maneuvering it, so he was doing all of the driving. I later proved him wrong. He parked and jumped in the back of the van and laid down on the futon mattress that we had laid there. He told me to leave him alone and proceeded to pass out from exhaustion. I was pretty freaked out because the rest area building was unmanned, locked up, and dark inside. The restrooms were closed. The small rest area building was surrounded by dark woods. There were about 4 other cars in the small parking lot, but no sign of any drivers, so I imagine they were having an emergency laydown as well. Normally, I would never have set foot outside of the van alone in such a scenario. My instincts told me not to get out of the van, but I had taken some Midol for my menstrual cramps, and they had given me brutal nausea. I needed some pretzels. I mustered up all of my courage and opened the passenger side door and squeezed through the space between our vehicle and the vehicle that was parked directly next to ours. As soon as I had a clear line of sight to the front of the rest stop building, I saw the thing and saw it clearly. Straight ahead, I saw the brightly lit front facade of the rest stop. To the left of the door was it. To the right of the doors was a vending machine. Immediately, it communicated with me. I was flooded with what I consider a telepathic message from the being. I cannot be seen. I cannot be seen. I must travel by night and exist in darkness. I cannot be seen. I cannot be seen. I cannot be seen. And I felt an enormous wave of compassion for the being, rather than fear, which may seem a more logical reaction to someone hearing the story. For some reason, my brain only categorized it as one thing initially, an outsider worthy of compassion and tolerance. Its skin was pure chalk white, not the skin tone white, but the color white. Its eyes were several times larger than ours. It had 2 little air holes for a nose and a very thin mouth. Its frame was completely concealed by its enormous, long black hooded robe. It looked as if it was quite gaunt underneath, pretty frail looking. It was sitting on its bottom, knees bent, back against the brick front of the rest area, to the left of the front doors of the rest area. It was sitting with its back very straight, tall and erect. It seemed in awe of me, or maybe in awe that I was actually approaching it. It looked vaguely like a human, very vaguely. Its face was snake-like. Its eyes were right on me. I threw a little everyday smile in its direction, and I did something strange. I continued to walk toward the rest area, even after seeing it. I walked towards the rest area building, closer to it. I walked forward about 20 feet from the rear of the van to the rest area steps, up the 20 or so steps, and to the right, where the vending machine was located. My thoughts at this point were very bizarre in retrospect. I felt bad for the thing. I did not want it to feel different. I know that sounds hilariously quaint if we are indeed talking about an interdimensional being, but I did not want to run back into the van because I did not want to hurt its feelings. I did not want to make it feel like a freak. It had already told me that it could not be seen due to the way people would react, so I wanted it to know that I did not judge it for the way it looked, and that I was willing to come to terms with its horrific appearance in order to extend some humanity to it. I did not know about fallen angels and such at the time. So, it was with that very bizarrely strong conviction to be righteous and humane to it that I walked toward the vending machine. I actually got pretzels. I'm telling you, my stomach was churning. I used the vending machine with my back to it. Pretzels in hand, I swiveled around to look at it again before descending back down the steps. It was at that moment that pure terror rippled through me. I was closer to it now, approximately 15 feet away, and I could see now that there was definitely no way that it was human. It was staring right at me like a wide-eyed insect. It was still in exactly the same position, except that it had turned its head to look at me better as my position changed. It looked like an alien. It looked like a demon. It was not human. Its huge, one-dimensional eyes did not have whites. They were almond-shaped, like the classic alien eye that we all know. It was then that I realized it was extremely tall, unthinkably tall. Although I was standing and it was sitting, its head still stood taller than mine. Its huge eyes were fixed on me totally with fascination, alarm, and with the most intense focus, just like the way my cat looks at something right before she pounces on it. When I made the decision to climb the stairs towards it and not to retreat to the van, I thought that it was sitting on top of something, and that was why its head was raised up so high. Now, from this closer perspective, I could see that it was not sitting on anything but its own butt. If I had realized that it was this tall at the start, I very well may not have gone up the stairs. So, after the ripple of terror went through me, I responded by smiling the way you smile at a stranger when your eyes catch on the bus. I shot a casual, thin, innocuous little, "Hey, how you doing?" smile. Why and how I acted as if things were totally normal, I cannot explain. I have never acted so coolly in my life. If I were to guess what the thing was doing when I encountered it, judging by its body language, I would say that it was somewhat displaced and resting, but I have no clue. Maybe it was in the middle of something far more sinister. It did not look like a mutant or an experiment. It looked ancient, timeless, and placeless, graceful, horrible. It was also firmly in this dimension when I saw it. It was not a hazy vision in the slightest. The lighting was not dim. It was not even a remotely ethereal experience. The extremely bright lights that illuminated the front facade of the rest area building revealed every contour of this entity. If only I had been closer, I could have provided much more detail about its facial features. As I was walking back to the van, I quickly strategized about how to make sure that my fear did not paralyze me and prohibit me from getting safely inside the car. I decided not to look back or even around me as I turned the key, because if I saw that it had moved, or I saw it coming towards me, I would have been too terrified to manage with the car keys. I got in the van, I locked the door, I screamed that we needed to leave immediately. We did. As we drove away, about 90 seconds after it was last in my sight, I looked out the window and saw that it was gone. There was nothing where it had been, just brick wall and concrete floor. I began to tell my boyfriend that I just had the ultimate experience, and although he was a dude who was always going on about the Vedas and Madame Blavatsky and whatnot, for some reason, his only response was a trite, "We're in Florida, what do you expect?" He was an extremely abusive person, so I decided to leave it at that, and not attempt to share any more with him. As far as the height of the entity, at first I thought it was about 9 or 10 feet tall. Now that I am drawing a diagram, I realize that it was likely significantly taller. As I said, its head stood taller than mine, even though I was standing and it was sitting. I am 5'2". That means that it was approximately 6 feet tall from its butt to the top of its head. From its butt to its knees may have been 4 to 5 feet, and from its knees to feet, 3 feet. But that means that it was about 14 feet tall. I can hardly wrap my mind around that. Screw it, I'll bite. K has not had a decent spoops thread in a while. Be me. Summer 2021. Road trip out to Idaho from East Coast for best friend's wedding. Turn the whole thing into a giant camping trip across the US. Return trip. Hit up Glacier National Park. Decide to park near Kintla Lake, within pissing distance from Canuck Land. Pick related is roughly the route I took. Park at Kintla Lake Ranger Station. Hike from Ranger Station up the coast of the lake. Follow Kintla Creek until it levels out. Then levels out. Then head up to some higher ground. Pitch tent. Vibe. Fast forward to nighttime. Fire is burning. The vibes are immaculate. Go to take a piss before bed. Hike a few dozen yards from camp. Come around a corner of rock and see this hairless, coyote-looking thing. It turns and sees me. We both freeze. It stares at me dead in the eyes for a solid 10 seconds before snarling and running towards me. Oh crap. Draw pistol. An S&W 642 in .38 special. Thing stops in its tracks. Looks confused. Looks me in the eyes again. Raise gun. Thing runs off. Well, that was weird. Take piss. Go back to tent. Can't shake this feeling that I am being watched. Eventually get in tent and go to sleep. Wake up at like 4 AM to this awful feeling of what I can only describe as dread. Grab pistol and get out of the tent. Add another log onto the embers of my campfire. As fire grows again, I see that coyote dog thing again, staring me in the eyes again. I get a better look at it while we have our staring contest. Not gonna green text the description. It looked like a hairless coyote, but it didn't really make any sense. Its skin on its face was super tight, almost forcing it to keep its mouth open, completely. But everywhere else, the skin was super baggy and almost falling off the body. It looked like there was hair or something on its feet, but I didn't really get a good look at its feet. It stares at me. I stare back. It was making direct eye contact with me. Not like how regular dogs do, but almost human-like eye contact. It stands up and starts running at me. Draw pistol and fire 2 rounds. All aboard the E train. Thing turns and starts running off. Fire last 3 rounds at it. I know at minimum the last 2 shots hit it. Panic time. Go back to the tent and grab rifle. Winchester 97 on the left of pick related. Not gonna bother digging around in my bag for my extra pistol rounds. Come back out of tent and see some shape running towards me. Raise rifle and fire. Thwap. Whatever it is, it goes away. Wait until sunrise before packing up my stuff and huffing it out of the park. No clue what the hell I shot. Never saw a body or any tracks either. Be me in 2007. Driving back home to Santa Fe after visiting family in Southern California. Get to Gallup, become extremely tired for some reason. Pull off to an empty lot outside of town to take a nap. Close enough to still see some lights from the town. Far enough that they don't keep me awake. Wake up a couple hours later to some weird noises. Hear what sounds almost like coyotes, but more guttural. Used to hearing coyotes after moving to Santa Fe a few years earlier. Ignore the weird sounding coyotes and try to get back to sleep. Wake up to the sounds again, except this time, it sounds like they're closer to my truck on the passenger side. Grab a flashlight and my 9mm from my glove box and shine the light out my passenger window. Don't see anything. Hear a scraping sound on the driver's side rear panel, almost like my car is being keyed, followed by the noise of the rear passenger tire clearly losing air. Get pissed and turn around to look out my driver's side window. At the exact same time, a large hand with claws slaps against the window, cracking it. It is huge. I am 6'2" and can palm a basketball. The hand is easily larger than mine. Practically crap my pants. I drop the flashlight and my gun, scream, and start honking the horn. The noises scare off whatever it is. All I see is a large shadow run off into the brush. Realize I can't drive off since I am pretty sure my tire is flat. Fight or flight kicks in. I grab my gun, get out of the car, and fire a few rounds into the bush towards the direction it ran off to. Definitely hear a noise, like an animal yelping. Maybe I hit it. Get back in my truck, move to the passenger side, turn on the engine and all my lights. Hold my gun close while I call the cops. 10 to 15 minutes later, cops show up. Screw my life, it's res cops. I must be on the reservation. They clearly look uncomfortable about the situation after I tell them the story. I ask if they're going to take a report. They refuse, both saying they don't want any of this on paper. They try to avoid saying it directly, but one of them quietly blurts out, Skinwalker, once I ask what kind of animal would fit my description. Both say they're surprised, because they usually leave white people alone. One of them is a bro, and helps me replace my tire with my spare, while the other keeps a lookout. Thank them for helping, and get the hell out of there as soon as my tire is fixed. Fast forward to 2011. Get a genetic testing kit for Christmas. Previously thought my Mexican ancestry was mostly Spanish or some Pueblo tribes. Find out I'm actually 1/4 Apache. Realize the Skinwalker possibly picked up on this, since Navajo and Apache don't really get along historically. Avoided all reservations since. Refused to even drive through them during the day.